Hello and welcome to La Della Dulcinea. Today is August 24th, 2008, and on this day in history in 1814, the British forces set the White House and much of D.C. on fire. So, Katz, why were we at war with the British in the first place?
Alright, well, it was a pretty young country at this time, the U.S. We just beat the British in 1776, or that's when the war started, and the British were still, they thought they were treating us like kids. That's what they were doing. So they were impressing our sailors, and they were helping the Native Americans kind of repel our expansion to the west. And they were just kind of treating the U.S. like kids, and the U.S. was not happy about that. They were their own country, and they wanted to trade with France. Britain was preventing that, so that's why they went to war.
So, what happened that particular day?
Well, this is what happened. The British were pretty mad about the U.S. The U.S. was in Canada at this time, around Canada, like a year earlier, and they, during an attack on York, they burned down most of the city. So the British they wanted to retaliate, and they also thought that this would kind of destroy American morale if they burned down the White House and the Capitol. So they started marching in that area, and James Madison called an emergency meeting at this time, and he's like, what should we do to defend Washington, D.C.? But his Secretary of War was like, forget about Washington, D.C. Baltimore is where we have to defend. Washington, D.C. is not going to be a big deal.
Why did you say Baltimore?
Because Baltimore was a big city, but Washington, D.C. had like maybe 6,000 people. It was a swampland. It was pretty small and seemingly insignificant. So they pretty much, they didn't leave, they left it pretty undefended. So the British started marching north from Virginia, and they were coming upon, they got to the Battle of Blandenburg with the U.S., and the U.S. actually outnumbered the British in this fight, but the U.S. still lost because they were very uncoordinated this time. So the British moved up, and then they moved to the White House and to the Capitol. So before they were able to make it there, Dolly Madison and everybody else was like, we got to get out of here, but first we got to save whatever we can. Dolly Madison was actually one of the last people to leave before the British came.
No kidding.
Yeah, she's a trooper.
Yeah.
And she took some cabinet documents with her to make sure they were saved. And actually, a 15-year-old slave was the one who saved the Declaration of Independence.
Really?
And a clerk was able to save. A clerk was able to save the Declaration of Independence, and the slave was able to save the big picture of George Washington that you see at the White House all the time. So they burned the city to the ground. They actually burned the city to the ground after they had a little banquet, because that's what the British did back then. They had banquets.
And so then how do we get everything back together? Our city is on fire, and the White House is gone. What happens next?
Well, they actually, James Madison hired somebody, actually the guy who designed the White House originally, to rebuild it. See, the outside of the building pretty much remained intact, but the rest of the building was pretty much destroyed.
Yeah.
So they had it redone, and it was painted white. So I guess it was informally called the White House after that. And then not until like the 1900s did Theodore Roosevelt be like, we should officially call this the White House. Before it was actually called the Executive Mansion or the Presidential Palace. But I guess this had more of a good ring to it.
A nice ring to it. Well, thank you very much for your report. Very
You're
interesting. And for more information on this story as well as others, please visit us at findingdulcinea.com. Thank you, and we hope to see you again tomorrow.